Welcome everybody to the Sustainability Commission meeting. I met you guys last month. Ian, do you do the script first thing?
Yes, I should probably do my script.
Well, Ian created the script. We will be reviewing and approving the agenda. So if anybody hasn't done that, you can put it over.
I just had a question about where the letter from Beyond Toxic connected.
Zach is going to talk about it. Oh, the comments.
During public comment. Superb. Okay, I move to approve the agenda as written.
Do we have to do the script before we do that, or? Okay, second. Great. All in favor? Okay, great. Agenda is approved. Ian, should I go to the next thing, or do you want to go to the next thing? Okay, so this is my last time being chair, and so this year during the land acknowledgement piece, I tried to take it like a step forward beyond just acknowledging and doing some kind of action. And it is a little awkward because we're, in our position, we can't actually do action as a group. So I just shared each time like something that people could do in their personal lives, from like supporting land back movements or local language revitalization. There was different cultural events, just different things throughout the year. So that was my attempt at moving beyond an acknowledgement. And my last year, there is a training that some of you might be interested in. It's a 3-hour Zoom training called Decolonization 101, Native American Cultural Competency and Awareness, a Native values-based training to address inequity at the foundational level. And it's hosted by Live Oak Consulting, which is a group. So it's on Zoom if you're interested. It's in August. And yeah, and I'm appreciative of Matima for starting acknowledgements in the commission, and I hope that as we move forward, people can just find your own way to make it as meaningful as we can. Continue that practice in some way or another. The next thing is to approve the April and May minutes. I'll move to approve them. Any seconds? I'll second. Okay, all in favor?
I have to abstain from that. I approve it.
Me too.
Yeah, me agree.
Okay. They are approved. And do you want to do the housekeeping now?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you. So good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us in this hybrid meeting format. And just a quick housekeeping note before we begin the rest of this evening's meeting. So for members of the public who are joining the meeting via computer, device, or phone, please be advised that your microphone, webcam, and phone are automatically muted when you enter the meeting as an attendee. If you wish to participate during the public comment portion of the meeting and haven't already done so, please raise your hand virtually to join the speakers queue in one of 2 ways. For those viewing the meeting on a computer, laptop, or other device, click once on the blue hand icon. For those listening to the meeting on a phone, press *9. I will lower hands as speakers are called upon, and when the public comment begins, we will announce your name and unmute your microphone. You will have 2 minutes to speak, after which your microphone will again be muted. Regarding the chat and QA functionality of Zoom, please note that attendees will not be able to use these features. Lastly, in accordance with the passage of HB 4212, this meeting will be recorded, and recordings will be posted to the Sustainability Commission website. I just want to thank everybody for their continued patience, flexibility, and good humor as we continue to experiment with ways to meet safely and hear from members of the community. As always, feel free to contact the Sustainability Commission if there's testimony you were not able to provide or wish to give us comment in other formats. And with that, I turn the meeting back over to Chair Allen.
Thanks, Ian. So now we have public comment, and I think Zach is going to go first.
Zach, go ahead. Unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you. Hello, Sustainability Commission. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I wanted to speak to you about an issue that's important to me personally and for other members of the Bethel community, which is the Golden Garden Ponds Park development. It's a large natural site in North Eugene in Bethel. Contains 3 large ponds, former aggregate sites, but have become a really important natural area in the Bethel area with herons and bald eagles and western pond turtles, which are a state sensitive species and an Oregon conservation strategy species, as well as being considered for federal listing under the Endangered Species Act. The city around 2016 did a sports needs assessment that suggested the city has a need for a large sports complex, approximately 10 diamond fields and 4 to 6 rectangular fields. And the Golden Garden site was selected as a primary candidate for that development. There's currently a planning process underway where the city is reaching out to residents to get their opinions. There's a lot of concern in the community that the natural area is going to be extremely negatively impacted by 16 sport fields on the site, as well as the potential impact of plastic astroturf if all of those fields are plastic, what that will do to in terms of runoff to the pond turtles and other important species in that area. So I've been talking to community members and getting support for asking for a 500-foot buffer around the ponds and no plastic astroturf being used on the site. The city recently linked on its website to the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife best management practices for turtles, which calls for a 1,650-foot buffer between pond turtle habitat and major infrastructure, and a 500-foot buffer between turtle habitat and minor infrastructure. And the example they give is a picnic table. So minor infrastructure is very minor infrastructure. So we really think that there should be at least a 500-foot buffer on the site, and that we should not be using plastic astroturf on this site. We've been told that there will be a materials analysis to help determine what type of turf to use: grass, plastic astroturf, or some type of new natural astroturf that's not considered as toxic and has lower cancer risk for kids. But we're really hoping that the Sustainability Commission will take a look at this issue and ideally recommend similar recommendations around at least a 500-foot buffer zone in line with the bare minimum that Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife recommends, and that we don't include plastic astroturf on the site, which will very much change the nature of the site, where people go to relax, see nature, see raptors and bald eagles, herons, these species of concern, which do use the surrounding fields to feed. And just thank you very much for your consideration, and appreciate your time tonight.
Okay. Is there any other public comment? The commissioner's response to public comment? Art and then Karen.
Yeah, Golden Gardens is a place that I go maybe once every 2 weeks or so and take some walks around the pond in the afternoon. You know how people my age do that kind of. And I agree with that. I mean, you do see pond turtles. It's important pond turtle habitat, and the city is invested in that and tried to protect that area. I was quite surprised. I've been looking at the survey. People could get online, just look at that survey. It's there if you want to see what's being planned and things like that. Yeah, I think they say they've done the demand analysis, which is interesting because I don't know how there's that much demand for that, but can't argue with that. But I am interested in what Zach has said about the recommended setback from the Fish and Wildlife Service and all. You know, probably would be good if the commission could set up a real quick committee that could meet for a month and come back with some, analysis and thought about it. I don't think we can immediately think about that today. Everyone should take a look at what's being planned there and see what maybe we could contribute as our input to that process.
Karen?
Thanks so much, Zach, for caring about this. I too go to Golden Gardens, and it's an absolutely magnificent gem in our city. And if you haven't been there, I recommend eagles and turtles. The way that I understand it, because I've been trying to provide some public input on this, was that the public comment period is over and basically it's a done deal. And I wonder if Councilor Semple could has anything to say about this, and if there's still an opportunity for us to provide some input. Where it's at.
council meeting, so they don't have more dates. I'm surprised that it just. threw something that was meant, I don't know.
I think if you could just speak up a little bit, because when I watched the Zoom recording, the soft voices were hard to hear on the.
I'm sorry, I'm used to having a microphone. I don't know the answer. If we did hear about it, I'm not remembering, but it's been a while. But I know there was in May, there was public input through the middle of May. And I remember that, but I don't remember it coming back to us since then. Unless it was maybe on the consent agenda.
So maybe we could ask, maybe Ian could find out about that for the commission, if there's any way for us, is it timely, can we give input or not? That would help.
Just on the master plan website for Golden Gardens, and as Zach mentioned, this was a former aggregate site, so the city's master plan has gotten it from basically an industrial waste to the space as it is now, and the master plan's full build out includes these facilities. It looks like there is one more survey that will go out. There's a second of 3 surveys. The second has recently closed, that includes 3 draft designs. And in the Q&A about the ponds, impact to conservation of the ponds, it says the intent is to establish a significant buffer between the natural area and the developed park amenities. And so I think that exacts, spacing for best conservation value, could have some input about what people would like to see. I would be surprised if the city opted for plastic turf in that space, considering its value. And there have been recognition of cancer in astroturf that's come to light very recently. People spend a lot of time on it, and it moves around. So those 2 pieces that are mentioned, I think, are very reasonable to add to what looks like current input that's being requested from the city.
Anybody, did I miss anybody?
Can someone just tell me really quickly what is on that space right now where the turf, whatever kind of turf they use, where the fields are going to be? What is it? So it's a 230-acre site, and the ponds are in sort of one zone of it, and the city has leased the other parts of those fields to actually a grass farmer who's grown the grass seed for the city to use. So currently it's a big old field of grass. My line of thinking is just like heat reflection in that part of the city as well, and I wondered what the urban forestry plan has to say. In some area as well. Well, it currently has no trees in that whole space, so adding canopy would be. I mean, I know there's a master plan for increased canopy in Bethel, and I just was curious how this could relate to that part with a bunch of sports fields being particularly reflective.
Okay, so we, this is not a decision making right now, it's just informational, so we can, I think when we talk about the committees, maybe we can bring this topic, because in the past, when we just wanted to write a simple letter, like one person would just do that, and then we talk about it as a group and then move forward and maybe read it to council. That didn't take a committee, so that's something that maybe we could save for that time to discuss, like the different ways we move forward on emerging topics. Does that sound good? So, yeah.
We didn't hear back from Zach, so I wonder if Zach, we asked him if he knew anything further about
Okay.
this
Yeah, just
regulatory process.
Zach, if you wanted to speak, raise your hand again.
Hi, yeah, thank you. I think Louisa had it right in that the round 2 survey just closed. They are going to be opening a round 3 survey, probably in around a month to 2 months. And so the city is going to take the 3 current draft designs, which included a 200-foot buffer on the east and north edges of the ponds. And they're going to take those 3 and take public comment, much of which was to increase buffer zones. and come up with a final-ish plan that they will then present to the public for that third round survey. And so it's very timely to weigh in both with the need for expanding the buffer and ensuring 500 feet ideally, as well as the turf material, which we have been told that decision has not been made yet. But certain planning documents pushed for synthetic turf of some kind, whether that's a natural or a plastic variety, I think is still to be determined. So any voice that the Sustainability Commission can lend on those two issues would be very much appreciated.
I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this, but for personal reference, doesn't Beyond Toxics has a petition drive, or there's more information about it on that website if we're personally curious. Zach?
Yeah, so I've been doing a petition in the Bethel area that we've gotten like 200 signatures on in the last week. And then Beyond Toxics did a longer version of that that they drafted based on the language that we've been using. So there's that longer version on their website. Just prior to this meeting, I also shared with Laura that petition language. The letter that the Active Bethel community sent last year asking for looking at turf type and having scientifically based buffer areas, as well as a link to some internal city documents. The sports needs assessment that spoke to the need the city has for these sports fields, and a phase 1 and phase 2 feasibility analysis on the sports complex. So that those materials are available for whoever gets tasked with writing a letter potentially out of this group.
Thank you.
And so we'll come back to this topic when we talk about how we move forward on new issues like this. So now we're gonna have council communication and updates.
Thank you very much. Sort of random order, things to do with money, we passed the budget. We had a second meeting today for the revenue team, which has shifted a little bit from just direct funding for climate, homeless, and downtown, I think, to a more general need, because we have an $8 million gap. Plus we need to fund those things. Those are urgent goals. So it will have a little broader focus and hopefully some newer ideas. I really appreciate the attachment of the Sustainability Commission's suggestions for revenue. I was very kindly to get that again. We passed an extension of the downtown urban renewal, which will be mostly used for housing. Today we worked again on renter protections, and Monday we'll have another long work session on it. Trying to be able to keep people housed is the main goal. The sticking points are, do we have landlords pay tenants when they have to leave some more rent? It's been quite contentious, but we've been working through it. So stay tuned. We approved boards and commission members. Unfortunately, I think we still have 2 vacancies here. And they're all counselor appointed instead of council appointed. We passed a new camping code, majority of council did, which rather than saying where you can camp says where you can't. Be happy to know it's quite far from waterways. It's just, that's my mind, 100 feet from waterways and the top of the bank of the river and also ditches. So some more protection for natural areas, but still no place to know that you can go to. It's a crisis. And then on a more personal note, instead of a report, the mayor and Councillor Leach and I went to a tour of Schnitzer Recycling Metals. And I loved it. I love this kind of industrial things. And unfortunately, the big chopper machine wasn't working, but they said it could come. And they just bring in all kinds of stuff. They have the scavenger auto parts place, and when they've been taking all the parts off, then the carcass comes to here. But it's like glass, it's really reusable, it's really recyclable. And there's these whole different processes they do to separate the metals and how much of different metals can go to. So keeps things out of the landfill, keeps us from having to mine new metals. And we throw it out every day. So I'm just wondering if there could be, not everybody's gonna have, on their yard area, little bucket prevent minerals. But I wonder if there would be a possibility to have more drop-off points rather than just the dump and Schnitzer and any other metal recyclers I don't know about. If you have a lot of metal, you can get some money for it, but paper clips, bent nails, old curtain rods, the hinge that is rusty. If all of us, I have a little jar and it's about this full in just a few months. If we saved all of that stuff, twist ties have metal in them. It would really add up. And it's one of those things that could involve every single person. I like those things that give us some solidarity. So anyway, if in the fall, Commission thinks that might be interesting. I think it would be good. Well done, great job doing this second part. And thank you for this year's hard work. I know it's been a frustrating one as we should do it. So it's another issue, but I really do appreciate
We talked about the revenue committee letter, which I think are you.
Start.
Say one thing, we talked about it today and I said, hey, Sustainability Commission wants representation and the manager sits next to me and she was writing it down. So finally, time to talk.
That was one thought I had. We could just tell you to do it anyway, but then you've done doing it. But this kind of comes back from, several years ago, the commission was concerned about, we couldn't really have a successful program in sustainability and realize the goals we had for the community if we didn't have some funding to do that, both for staff to pursue other grants as well as funding incentives for people in the community and things like that to get people to be able to make the things. So we come up with a dozen, I didn't count them again, kind of ideas, some of them carbon related and some of them were just general income or revenue related source ideas that we came up with, and we had sent that along. And there was a meeting, you did hold a meeting to consider possible fundings of things. And I guess one favorite was a measure, a bond measure in a sense for both that and homeless.
Right.
That didn't kind of really go beyond that, but there was some discussion. So when you brought this up, it seemed natural to try to get those ideas back there. So just an informational piece back to the council. And Dennis was quite discussing getting someone on that committee. And so including that in the letter that we would send along with our recommendations, saying that we would very much think it's appropriate to have someone from the commission on there to represent sustainability goals and funding for sustainability. So that's what the letter and the attachment was about.
And I just want to slip in that our three main goals are homeless, climate, and downtown. And then we have this gap also, but it's still right in there in the top that we are looking funding for funding.
Does anyone have any comments or questions about this letter? It's up there and it's in the packet. And after we talk, we're going to vote to include it or to send it off.
It's well edited for me, so hopefully.
It looks like there is no discussion. So motion to approve this memorandum.
Could we send it to the manager too, because this is actually going to be an advisory committee to the manager. And so it won't just be the mayor and the council picking their people. That would be more like the mayor's advisory. So include the manager.
A city manager?
Yeah.
There's two places for it, I guess, but I had that two above there too.
I guess I just had one question,
Mhm.
given Art, that your extensive knowledge of this topic particularly will be lost to the world when you cycle off today. Did somebody volunteer to participate in this committee with bringing the topics that were brought up by this fund? Oh, so I can pull that up too.
It was a full committee before, I mean.
I know.
Oh, but now, you mean right now?
Well, who else was on the committee, and is anybody raising their hand to participate if they were, if that option was there?
I think
I was
Dennis,
on it.
yeah, and
That's what-
Dennis as well.
Yes, okay. So folks who are on the committee that brought together those funding options would be great choices if they were willing to serve, to participate, they bring the most knowledge to the table.
Serve on the revenue committee,
Yes.
one of those people.
If they were willing.
We don't have to put that in the letter, that's just.
We do not,
To the commission.
but
Any other changes to the letter?
I just have one comment,
We wanted to do the 2 lines.
but it isn't a change necessarily.
right here.
And I wasn't on that committee, so I'm kind of getting thrown into this right now. But what I did notice, reading through it in the 5 minutes I had before I came here. Is that there's nothing on there about. And this is kind of a theme in some ways, about attracting ways to pay for this stuff. Like, there's hitting up everybody to pay for it, but there's no like increasing the amount of people that can pay for it. Or
I'm gonna stop you, because that's a super important but different topic. Because we're not gonna change that letter was like created in the
Sure.
committee, but we can change that letter.
okay, that was just a comment that moving forward, if we do something like this again, it seems like there's a need for like recruiting sustainable companies where people could earn money to then help pay for all of these things that are listed on this as far as being a taxpayer. That was just something that shouted out to me when I read through all of it.
Okay, things, and maybe we could have, if we do get a spot, we could have another whole discussion and everyone could throw their ideas out and we
Sure.
should like come fresh to the table with like new input from people. But for right now, we can't change any of that.
And I think a couple of the items in the list, we know aren't really possible, but I left them in there since that was the set of recommendations we had before.
And to be honest, the timing of this letter probably predates the passing of the Inflation Reduction Act at the federal level.
Yeah.
And so there are other money is coming down that is not represented here that would be brought to the table during the revenue committee meeting. And I'm sure, Ian, you've been starting to look at those avenues or coalitions in the neighborhood. Yeah.
You want to add a sentence in here that addresses that, like, since,
I mean, no, no,
The idea is to forward this letter as a reminder.
yes,
This
okay.
is something that the commission sent to you a couple years ago. We just wanted to let you know. There's paperwork out there, yes.
Yeah, and we know it would be different because there's more.
Okay.
Totally different rules. Counselor Semple?
Let's say a few years ago, just to make sure everything lines up. The Sustainability Commission is aware that the mayor, city council, and city manager are appointing. It's really gonna be the mayor and the manager, but include the council.
Okay.
Because she's got a lot of power in this one, so we might as well acknowledge that she's one of the people.
So in that first sentence, you're
Yeah,
saying,
just in the first sentence. No, you already got it there.
I'm changing the order.
No, you
you're aware that
Oh,
the
then-
mayor
there
and
it
city
is.
manager.
Is that correct?
But I would put city council after the mayor and then put the city manager. If you like, if you're on board.
Put city council here
City
first.
manager after city.
Okay. There's a.
Well, we are her boss.
The pecking order, there we go.
We only have 3 employees. I lorded over her. These are small things, but it makes us look like we're more.
And then in the meeting notes, we'll note that if we do have a spot, we'll reconvene and talk about new opportunities and edits to the letter and all that stuff.
I think that's a great idea because I think there is, as Elisa mentions, there is a lot of new information that's kind of come. And as Art mentioned, I think we learned in the interim that there are a few things that maybe don't work because of the working constitution or for other reasons.
Yeah, lots of-
Yeah, we have to revisit that.
Okay, so now I think we're ready to vote. Okay, so motion to approve this memorandum. Okay, second, great, all in favor? Okay, then stand aside. Okay, we did it. And so the process is Ian will email it, and if anyone wants to read it at a city council meeting, they could, though I don't know if anyone thinks that's appropriate at this point.
We are gonna have another work session on it before the committee starts. So that's only, but
Do we feel like an email is sufficient? For just an email from Ian to, or Danielle to these people, is that sufficient, or do we want to ask someone to read it out loud? And
oh, I see what you mean. I think it's too soon. Wait till we see the revenue on the agenda again, and then it will be the right time. Because we sometimes have short meetings.
Clarify, send it via email now, but wait about presenting it or don't send it.
I would print it and put it in a packet. You can send it by email. I would think it might be good to send it by email tomorrow because we just had the meeting today. That another reinforcements. And it could go in the next packet. 10 pieces of paper.
In the packet for
The
that work
council
session?
packet, no, the council packet, just in general.
Okay,
I mean, that might be overkill. You want to put it, the race, put it in the packet when we're going to talk. That
Work session.
makes more
Okay.
sense.
got it.
but send it tomorrow.
Because we just.
Send it tomorrow.
We've got it.
You got it, great.
Squeaky wheel, squeaky wheel.
All right, so now we're moving into nominations and elections for commission officers, chair and vice chair. So I think we nominate people. They can. Well, who? You guys, you want me to say what we've done in the past, or do you want to go with what we're doing?
Did this, so
So,
we're a little bit off cycle just because we didn't have a forum last week, so I think
yeah.
normally we've done a nomination, had people think about it for a month and then done elections. We're gonna try and do both today, if possible.
So, we're gonna nominate people, and you can nominate yourself, you can nominate someone else. They can accept or reject that nomination. They can say something to the group, and then we're gonna vote. And I think we usually do chair first and vice chair, but maybe we could do the nominations for both at the same time. Okay, and I did talk to some people, or should I just nominate? Who? Yeah. Okay, okay, and we can do a lot of them, so I'm gonna nominate, and then if you wanna nominate other people, so we're not like I do it and then it's over, it's like anyone gets to do it. I'm gonna nominate Jan for chair and Devin for vice. Other nomination? Or I guess, do you accept?
I do accept.
Yes. Other nomination?
There were other people who were interested in each, were you interested?
I was just volunteering if there needed to be someone interested. Yeah, I'm very happy with the current nomination.
Anyone else want to nominate themselves or someone else? If you're, that's from before.
Can I ask a question? For folks who are remaining on, would people just share what their term out year is, or how many years they have left on the commission? Like you're in your, this is going to be your fourth year, is that right, Jan?
Third
You
year.
want me to pull up the roster
Yeah.
that shows all that?
That'd be so helpful, yeah, if we could just see it, not to pick on people, but.
I guess I would add a comment. Have to talk to a few people about it. We talked to some last meeting as well.
So we're gonna, or Jan's gonna make a comment about some of the discussion around it.
I just think it would be helpful. I am willing to accept this for the single year, didn't seem like there was anyone else who was really excited to be chair, so I want to make sure we have some nice continuity. But I think it's great that I hope that it works out for whoever is vice chair, to serve as vice chair this year and then move into the chair position. I think it's nice to look at that. It always works out that way, things happen, but I think that would be helpful for us.
Perplexed. No, okay.
I think just to have the potential, like, so to not have a vice chair that then wouldn't be there the year that they potentially would
Right.
be chair. So
Someone
not
who's
that
not
assuming that they'll
serving out
be
or-
chosen, but just to have that as a potential.
Which for me, since I didn't serve a full. I won't have served a full 2 years. I'm supposed to rotate out in June of next year. So it would depend on whether or not I am reappointed.
Yeah.
That would be the only thing, but that's not something I have control over, but I would say if you ask me at this point, that I would go talk to Matt and say, yeah, I would like to continue on. I don't have a reason not to continue on. If you ask me today.
Is this correct? Art, you're not allowed to leave, man.
That's what I was looking at.
You should talk. That means you.
No, I.
You still have one more
That's
year
right.
of your term, but he's leaving.
Oh, Louisa, you're expired too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, don't get so accurate. We've gone through the dates a couple times.
But I
Yes.
thought you had another year.
Oh, okay.
You can't go.
Yeah, but I must resign. My wife is on the faculty at the U of O and she's taking a sabbatical and we won't be around much at all next year.
Oh, I see.
There it is. Okay.
Okay. So Art is stepping down.
Yes.
Okay.
So that seat will have one more year. For a new
For somebody.
position, yes. Fill out that.
Another one to fill.
Yeah, we're working. We're getting that in a second, but we're working on it.
Start a new 4-year.
Yeah, right.
When somebody starts. No.
Okay, so we have,
So I guess,
we have
yeah.
all the information. I
I
think
guess
we're
that's why it
ready
says
to vote
Wayne
unless someone thought of nominating someone else.
Actually, less than a year.
I just wondered if anyone had any questions for me. It's okay if you don't, like preferred, maybe,
That's a good.
but I don't know, anyone. Then.
Well, I guess I have questions for both the proposed, just, I guess what, that we were just talking the other day about how the last couple of years have been a little bit unprecedented. And so you haven't had an experience of a fully staffed, fully normal year. The last one, I guess, being 19 is into the beginning of 20, where we had, presentations and we were sort of meeting quite frequently. We had lots of committees. It was a super active year. And so we've been in this recovery sense. And so I was just curious, both the leaders, potential leaders, what you would kind of want to see happen, new, different, augmented for this body to kind of regain that stability and progress forward momentum next year.
Yes, I agree with that. It has felt a little squishy, shall we say, for the last couple of years. And we have no staff and staff getting on board and dealing with the pandemic. It seems like dealing now with new interpretations of rules and things that it's not the way things were done before. So I think that is a challenge and it's something that I would like to see. It feels like we're maybe just starting to get some footing, but I don't know that I have a particular solution, but I think having some honest conversations amongst ourselves and with staff and with others that we need to talk to figure that out. What is the role? What are our goals? And certainly, I think those of you who have been around a while, even if you're leaving, you have some valuable input to give to that.
Jan and I kind of talked about this today, even about, defining the purpose and seeing, carrying that forward and continuing the mission of the commission, which I read that giant long document that he sent me, like, hey, wait, this is out there. Let's make sure that we're on track with that. And then also, I personally would like to see a full commission. And anything I can do to canvas people to get involved and counselors to a point if that's what needs to happen and all of that to be more involved on making sure there's a full commission. Yeah, appreciate
We could just find people who want to be on it. I can lobby those two.
it. And I submitted too.
We have a couple of people who have submitted applications and are interested and are good candidates. Yeah.
So, yeah, we'll
Give an
talk
update on
about,
that.
we're gonna update about where we are, because we're working with CMO staff to really try to target the counselors and
Come on.
get after them.
guys.
I know. Yeah, that's been frustrating for us too. I have a question. So one important charge of the commission is to be a trusted advisor to city council. So what will you do to become a trusted advisor? I mean, how will you build that trust with the council?
I actually have questions about that. I'm not sure if I have answers. I think there have been in the past some meetings set up. Maybe a couple of years between the officers and the mayor and our council liaisons. So I think, again, just making those direct connections and having some conversations about that would be good. I think having communication, some kind of communication back and forth, because I do think that's been a little bumpy in that. I think before some of us had gotten started when Josh was chair, there was a lot going on and a lot of things done, and it seemed like there was some pushback from council that was too much. Let's kind of keep it to a few items. And so I'm trying to just understand actually. I think that the commission is generally viewed in a good light by the council, and there's things that are supportive. So I think that maybe that exists, but I don't believe it.
Who's chair? Sorry.
Zach,
not
oh,
Josh.
did I?
You
always
said
say-
Josh.
I always say that. Going about that.
I mean, essentially, what, I mean, I am in agreement with you, not to sound, like I don't know what to say, but just also, yeah, like making sure the council remembers that we're here. No offense. But the rest of the council, not just Counselor Semple, like really like reaching out maybe to our individual counselors. I highly recommend everyone do that. I do it probably too much, but he's my city councilor, so that would be something I would encourage individual commission members to meet with their city councilors in their respective neighborhood.
And for the 4 at-large members, you can pick a council member. and reach
Yeah.
out to them.
Or multiple council
Or a couple.
members. Yeah, exactly.
Just want to know, Dennis has joined us.
Hello, Dennis.
Oh, was it?
Hi all, sorry I'm late. I was trying to get logged in late and I never got a link or an agenda sent to me this time. I don't know what the glitch was, but I just went back through to find it and I couldn't find it. So I logged in as a visitor and then emailed in, and I'm now here as a panelist listening in on the conversation, and I'll just continue to do that till I get caught up a little bit.
So my apologies, Dennis, and we'll figure out where that went sideways, but glad I noticed you and moved you over.
Okay, so I think we're ready to vote. Well,
I wonder if Dennis has heard much of the conversation about officers and if he has anything he wants to add.
I haven't. I just caught little pieces as I was, trying to get in. So where are we at in terms of who's willing is kind of the question. I heard little pieces that Art is likely to be out of the community from a spouse's sabbatical. But who's willing at this point?
we're about ready to vote. Jan for chair and Devin for vice chair, and they are willing and talked a little bit about what they would do moving forward and things that they might want to work on broadly next year.
Yeah, and I heard about that and I wasn't clear there was the context in terms of, their personal statements, but I certainly agree with the notions of what I heard about mission of being, a more trusted advisor to the council. And so thank you for your willingness, so.
And Mitra said that she was available but happy to not need to step forward, if I'm summarizing that correctly. So that was also we talked about. And I think that's everybody. So if there isn't any other comments or things to bring up, I think we are ready to vote. So we'll vote on chair first for next year. So Jan, all in favor? For vice chair or co-chair, Devin? Vice chair. Yeah, you're a person. Great, thank you so much.
If any of you ever meet my husband, talking about this, the others say I was drafted, I did not volunteer.
We won't use the word willing.
No, begrudging, unwilling.
Agreed. Okay, got it. So now we are updates from staff. So we're gonna talk about vacant seats and then the process to form new committees obstacle. And sending letters.
Yes.
We can add that in.
So I think maybe we'll talk about vacant seats first and go through that process.
That sounds good. Do you want to do that?
So we can-
Okay, I can give it a go. I'm gonna keep up, shoot, I should have kept open that roster, because that does kind of help me actually. So, where we're at is, Art and Louisa are wrapping up, their seats. Art still has the seat that Art held, so I'm gonna talk about you. Is vacating, still has one more year left in that term. So who's ever appointed to that seat would have 1 year and then the potential to do a second term. So basically what that means is Zelenka, Ye, Clark, and Leach are open seats. We've reached out to all of them about 2 weeks ago, so council support staff did, which we all kind of agreed was going to be the most effective messenger. And we heard back from Lindsay Leach. She appointed someone named Alexi Miller. I believe that's his last name. He seems like he's gonna be great. He's a engineer from New Buildings Institute, which is a nonprofit. They do a lot of work around decarbonization. I believe he's an engineer. So we'll move forward with getting him onboarded and stuff, but
Say his name again.
Alexi Miller. Alexander Miller. The other 3 seats, so Clark, we have not heard back from. And then Ye and Zelenka both said they'd like to see some candidates, but they want to make an appointment. They just want a little bit of help. And then, sorry, I didn't mention, so Laura's seat, her term is ending at the end of this month as well. And she's interested in serving another term, but we have not heard back from Evans. We're fairly confident, and we have this message, from city council support staff that it's not really because of her. He's sort of just having personal challenges that he hasn't been able to give a response. And so we're working on him, but we're hopeful that he'll reappoint Laura and fill that seat for another term. And so, yeah, so basically where we're at is we have a few names that have been submitted through, an informal recruitment process. We're working on getting a few more recruitments so that we have a good pool of applicants, candidates for counselors to choose from. So that's sort of where we're at.
Extending this.
Yes, and Chris is serving another term, if I heard that correctly.
Yes.
So, okay, that's good to hear. Any
So-
questions? Yeah.
I was gonna add
To add
one
before we
thing.
open up.
Yeah, no, yeah, we could.
I was gonna say that to add, so this commission is a little bit unique in that we kind of have the counselor specific appointed seats, and then there are also the 4 approved by council as a whole. And so for those 4 seats, that are the at-large seats, Typically, the city will go through a normal recruitment process similar to all other boards and commissions in here. Because we rely on each council member to appoint somebody, the other 8 seats can be more challenging. I think the good thing about this current city council support staff, the CMO staff, are that we've been having an ongoing dialogue with them. And I think they're willing to kind of help us kind of do a more active recruitment in support of helping councilors make decisions for those board specific seats. So I think we're going to have a much more defined and I think robust process for helping to fill seats as they become open. And I think that'd be a good thing in trying to not have seats that are open for years at a time, because we hopefully can help either get this in front of councilors in a more consistent way, or provide names for them to consider, and continue to hopefully build a more diverse portfolio of people who are interested and could be potential candidates to serve on the commission. I think there's kind of that joint goal there. So I think it's, it's taking a while, but I think we're making progress on this as a way to have a more systematic way to go about filling the seats as they come open.
Jan and Councilor Sun.
So how are you going about, you say you've gotten some suggestions from people and you're trying to add to that. How are you going about it? List of possible candidates portfolio.
Yeah, so we've initially, the idea was to give each council member an opportunity to be aware of this and come up with a name if they had a name that they're thinking about. I think behind the scenes, we've also been having some conversations first internally with other staff. So talking to staff who support the Human Rights Commission, staff who are in community development, other parts of the organization, say, hey, we're looking at things. If you know of somebody who might be interested, can you kind of flag that person? We're kind of expanding that now. And I think we're trying to figure out like what, if we're going to open up like a public recruitment and basically have the portal that people have been identified with, and using that as an opportunity to continue to sort of identify names. So we're trying to sort of widen that net, but we're sort of being very deliberate in how we do that and giving people an opportunity to do that for things. We're really trying to have that conversation, say these are open, and try to figure out where there might be opportunities to do that. I think the other part of that is trying to meet with council members to understand maybe what type of perspective would you want represented on the council, and figure out how we might target sort of those parts of the community as well. So we're trying to build a system so we can go about this in a much more defined, sort of deliberate way.
Councilor Sun.
Thank you. Who should Councillor Evans respond to as liaison? I'm going to email him and say, get on with reappointing Laura. So who should he email?
Sarah McKinney.
Sarah
I think
McKenzie?
Sarah McKinney and Danielle, if
And me.
possible.
Okay. I want to make it easy. Yeah. He hasn't been trained. And but before that, he had family members. He has to be, his attention has to be.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think getting a more established process would be great and will be really helpful, and is a good idea. And I would love to see as many positions as possible filled by the time we get together to do work planning and goal setting and everything.
We're hoping by next month to have as many of them filled as possible. Yeah, I mean, we're trying to have a pretty scope,
Yeah.
a clear process, but a process where we have hopefully as many of these seats filled as we possibly can, by July. So,
Thank you.
we're getting there. It takes time to develop processes in the city, so we're working through this.
Yeah.
Is there still plan to be a summer break where this body will not meet in July?
Yes, that was the plan. Yeah. I think a lot of it's going to depend on how far we get in terms of filling the seats. That seems to make the most sense. And then trying to align with the training and other things that CMO wants to do for all boards and commissions, and trying to work out how to align all those things. So again, does that speak to kind of the question you'd raised about trying to get seats filled?
Yeah, I think so, because I think that it's been, I mean, understanding the last 3 years have been tricky, but also just sort of this like black hole where counselors are appointing people and they're supposed to go out and find them and then bring them, in and appoint them, seems like not working.
Yeah.
I mean, just time wise for them, understanding for them, motivation for them. I mean, there's a list of things that makes it like just not at all. I think my story was like, you said something to Matt Keating, like, I have somebody to appoint. He's like, wait, what? I get a point? He's like, no, you can't have mine. It's like, can you go find his own? But I think there's just sort of a loosey-goosey way that it's sort of happening in the real world.
Yes, I think that's probably true, yeah.
It's one of those appointments where it's who you know. If you're aware of this and you know it comes. Maybe
Well,
not
I
the
mean,
best way, but.
Council,
that-
at this point, they know, I mean,
Kind of the ordinance, it basically says, you know, for these 4 seats, it's a defined process. For these others, like, good luck and, you know. let's figure it out.
So can we move to the next part of the, so we're gonna talk about the process to form new committees off cycle and then the letter.
yeah. Let's just rearrange the computers. Okay.
Could I share what I think happened with the letter to see if that
Yeah,
sounds
go for it.
compatible, just since you're getting started? If there's ever like a topic that would just need like a short like support letter, in the past, we never formed a committee. We just, someone said, all right, and we discussed it to make sure that the council is, we could make a motion to like appoint someone to write the letter and bring it back. And then we talk about it again, and then we approve it or change it or reject it or whatever, but that was the process. Does that feel like it still will work?
And we did that earlier this year with the overlay zone letter. So, yeah,
That's okay. Okay, just want to make sure.
That hasn't changed.
Great. So there was a talk about making a committee to talk about the Golden Gate, Golden Gardens, and that doesn't need to be a committee. It could just be somebody bringing a letter, and then we talk about it and move forward that way.
Well, hold that thought until we finish this next part of the conversation. Does Dennis have something to say?
Yeah, I have a question, just a clarification, and in terms of, you know, it means we can't do a committee that had a quorum, but somebody could initiate a particular position on an emerging issue. Then we would discuss it as a whole. I want to kind of look back at the prior issue of leaf blowers. And, you know, we proposed a committee. Could an individual say, I propose we take a position on it? And then the commission would discuss it as a whole and decide to do a letter. Is that a workable process? Because I know anytime a small group of us meets to discuss anything related to commission meeting, we're, you know, impacted by public meeting laws. When any portion of us meet to do the work of the commission. So it sounds like an individual could take initiative that becomes part of the agenda. Is that the only way we can do emerging issues?
Talk about like committees and emerging issues, but just going back to the letter, the letters have always been in response to like a public, something's happening, like they are doing this thing, these plans are being made, there's public feedback being taken. So we don't need to, so it's like we need to respond now or never because it's this timely thing, which is why we've done it that way. It's not like leaf blowers. Council's not talking about leaf blowers. There's no leaf blower, anything getting voted on. So we don't have any letter. We don't have like anything to respond to. So it's different. It would be like a committee. That's my feeling of the difference. And we're going to hear about how committees can be formed off cycle now, which is going to like new topics that we need to like discuss and figure out our position, not just to respond to something that's already happened.
Yeah, okay, that's clear to me that we hadn't gotten there yet.
In conjunction with what you're saying, so I think the other, that when there's some discussion or issue that's happening and we're asked to weigh in on it, we don't need to form a committee because there is a body of work that's already taken place. We're not doing our own research to decide whatever it's there. So that's another reason but the letter is sufficient. It's not need for.
Okay. We're gonna take a quick tech break because we have to switch the computers. So just give us 3
people want
minutes.
to go grab some sugar in
Yeah.
the corner.
Such a sucker for lemon poppy seed. When I first met my husband, I was 21. And my romantic overture was, if you were a muffin, you'd get lemon poppy seed. So at our wedding, we had lemon poppy seed cupcakes as our wedding cake. That's nice.
I think I survived off of lemon poppy seed muffins for like 3 years.
Now you're probably getting
You though. They used to have them for super cheap when you could go through underneath at the EMU.
Yep.
Oh.
And that's, I had.
My office was in the breezeway for 3 years. So,
Well,
But a lot of
careful,
people-
'cause they weirdly can make you test positive if you get tested.
Oh, I was like, bro, the breezeway?
No.
Or hair?
Running wise, yeah,
Yes,
which would be very
the answer is yes.
unfortunate, and I had a.
It's the top here.
Oh,
You're banned for 2 years.
you're joking that actually happened to you?
No, it didn't happen, but.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But it's hard to do. when you get-
I mean, if you were on my diet. Only lemon.
Only
poppy
poppy
seed.
It's weird, like there you have. Like just say like masters athletes, like people that take like any type of like medication or supplements.
Mhm.
I mean, they have, that nice little 20-page document that says you're supposed to read all of that and understand it. But I mean, if there's just a trace of anything, like it could be in a supplement. A supplement could have a trace of it because it was in a warehouse that also packaged
Oh
other
my
stuff.
gosh, that's absurd.
And so that there actually have been elite athletes that had to have suspensions because and then they figured out that the vitamins that they took had been contaminated because they were on the same shelf as another supplement that had.
Can't blame the athlete for that.
No, but they do. Unless you can prove you're innocent. That's the thing, is you have to prove you're innocent, and sometimes it's harder to prove a negative than it is obviously a positive. But then. Yeah, it's hard, because then people that actually really want to cheat, they know how the test works.
Oh, yeah, they've read that document.
So they not only that, they know the nanocycles for things breaking down and everything else, and they know. If I take a microdose, then it's out of my system by this amount of time. So. It's hard sometimes when you watch stuff because you see some performances and you go. I got a hard time with that one. Because it's just too much of an aberration, like people that come out of nowhere. Like there's a lady from, I think, Bahrain. Never heard of her, that she just magically paired by 3 seconds during the Olympics and won the 400. And you're like. That's a tough one.
Okay, is this everyone?
Must have been done like 10 years later, so they get to keep everything. No.
Okay, so, we now have a process for how to create a committee for topics that emerge throughout the year. And so just to back up a few steps and explain why we got here, basically when the CMO was notified that the commission wanted to create a committee on gas powered leaf blowers, we were told that as outlined in the code, we needed council approval in order to do that. And so to be clear, I just want to dispel any notions. This is coming at a time when the CMO is working with all of the commissions to bring them into alignment with the code. They're not, just please trust me when I say they're not specifically targeting the Sustainability Commission on bringing them into alignment. They're really working with all the commissions to sort of bring them back into line after some just turbulent years.
And just for people who maybe want to follow along on their laptops, everybody has been sent these slides.
It's in
They're in your email now. Just now.
Oh, just now.
Yes.
And so I know this might sound like, bureaucratic, red tape, whatever, but the code, it's really the legs we stand on. Here is, as a commission, the code is what created the Sustainability Commission. And so we need to adhere to it. And so basically there's two options in order to get approval from council to form a committee. The first option A is approval from council occurs through the work plan at the beginning of the year. That's, we're all aware of that. Option B, which is the process I'm about to show, is to get approval during the year when a topic emerges. And at this point, these are really the only two options we have that are in line with our code. So I'm just gonna share the process that we've sort of gotten the rubber stamp of approval from the CMO on. So basically, the idea or topic is first discussed with the commission meeting at a monthly meeting, as it would normally. Conversation, brainstorming, input from staff, input from commissioners. Before the next commission meeting, commission member who brought up the proposal and SC leadership will write a proposal, which includes purpose, scope, tenure. Again, we're already doing that. New step is public work director provides recommendations, which are integrated into the proposal. Why public works director? Well, he's sort of mine and Ian's, boss. So he's going to provide that. Do staff have capacity to shepherd this along? At the next monthly meeting of the commission, the proposal is presented as, updated with those recommendations. And you all get to vote. Do we want to move this forward as a committee? Yes, no. If the answer is yes, then it's presented to the mayor, councilor, Semple, and city manager at the next quarterly meeting, which have not necessarily been occurring on a regular basis, but will be going forward. And the reason it needs to go through these three people, is because mayor and city manager really need to know what's coming up for city council. They need to sort of be apprised of something before it makes it onto the city council agenda. So we want to make sure if any recommendations that they have that might make this topic more refined or help council better understand the topic can be added at that point. And then finally, the proposal is submitted to city council through the consent calendar for consideration, and then the committee can begin. So we've developed this sort of alternative process for emerging topics. It's been signed off by the CMO. We've recognized this has been, frustrating and taken a while. But basically at this point, these are our two options. Option A, at the beginning of the year, and option B through this. And really this shouldn't take this, if we're all kind of strategic about bringing up topics when we know that quarterly meeting is coming up, and we come up with a strong proposal, as strong of a proposal as we can right from the get-go. This shouldn't take, we could get a committee formed as quick as 6 to 8 weeks. So, this doesn't necessarily need to be a 3 to 4 month process if we all have our ducks in a row. So I just sort of want to share that timeline can be pretty quick if we're all on the same page. And so then moving forward, given if this is sort of the process that we have at this point for emerging topics, I wanted to sort of overlay the gas powered leaf blower committee. So, if we apply this process to where we're at with that committee, there are a few things, next steps that we can do. So here's the proposal as it was originally written. I'm not going to really go through the details of it because we've already read it. I don't know if you can read it, but it's, the basic proposal that we looked at a couple months ago, I think. Basic scope, basic purpose, basic timeline. And Ian and I, knew everyone was anxious to get this going. So we already got the public work director recommendations on it, which I can share with you next. And in that way, we can keep moving this proposal forward without causing further delay. So I can share those recommendations with you all now. These are some of the recommendations from the public works director. I thought they were great. I thought it was great feedback. And I actually think a lot of these recommendations were already discussed by this commission when we were first exploring the topic. They just weren't necessarily explicitly written into the proposal. And so, to be clear, these questions don't need to be already answered. These can mostly just be copy and pasted into the proposal that we have. But I think it's good to be at this level of detail in the proposal because often the commission is way ahead of where council might be on topics like this. And so providing this level of detail It adds to council's understanding on the topic. It gets us all on the same page of what the scope of the committee is gonna be. And it's just like a better use of the committee's time as well. You know, it doesn't take them 3 or 4 months to get to this point. It's like, this is already, everyone's on the same page about what we're gonna kind of start with. So these are the recommendations. I don't want to overwhelm you guys, but here are some additional things I found in the working agreements. If this helps refine and flesh out the proposal a little more. I don't really want to go through each bullet, but these are meant to sort of be prompting questions just to help flesh out a proposal that will add to council's understanding on the topic. And again, you don't have to like, not every question here needs to be answered, but this just helps to shape the narrative and frame the you know, what that conversation looks like when we're all talking about it, why are we bringing the topic now? What happens if we don't address it now? You know, so it's good things to think about. And I think basically where we're at now is if we're going to follow the process that we have created to get council's approval for this, the next step is that the recommendations that Matt, the Public Works Director, gave, the next step is for those to be integrated into the original proposal. And this is really just trying to ensure the success of this committee getting approved by council ultimately, and getting onto the consent calendar. And so really helping just to like refine the proposal and align it with what council's working on. Yeah.
These are great. And, you know, one could say, oh, that's a template for any proposal, but in a sense, that's a lot of what the committee itself does once we form the committee, because you're asking a lot of questions there that take some research to answer. And that's actually why we have committees, is to go do the work and answer those questions so that we can present it. I'm really, you know, we find that we have 3 people on the board and we know that there's a committee, there's a group out in the community that's interested in that. But to answer those questions is the point to some extent of having the committee. So I don't know how to address that.
You know, I don't think you need to overly think about having an answer to each of these questions. I think it's fine if there's a lot of these that are still unanswered. I think
We will do that.
yeah, exactly. And that's exactly the point. And so just, you know, I think the main message is having a really explicit proposal is more likely to get approved by council, which is ultimately the goal here. And I want to open it up. I want to hear if commissioners you know, could share specifically if integrating the recommendations is something, you know, we want to do now. But before I do that, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I just want to see if you have anything to add with on the note of like what the goal is here with getting council approval and why that's important. Before I open it up to the group, just if you could kind of speak to that.
Well, I want the commission to be successful. I want commissioners to feel that their work is valued. So I don't want the commission to go work on something that might be interesting to us, but isn't going to go anywhere with the council. Because really, my goal is to advise council to get our work session going and make change. So that needs to be an important thing to think about. Is there something council has any power to affect? And then if we have to agree on it, are they interested? Well, I don't care about that. We don't. Aside from that, one of the problems I have with this is that if it doesn't get to the mayor until a quarterly meeting, you know, I don't even know when our next quarterly meeting is, but it's not going to be till, you know, our next commission. So this committee, you know, is the next commission still going to even want it? I'm concerned about the middle step here. And okay, it might only take 6 to 8 weeks, but that's 2 months. And we have a commission that works from basically September through June. And that takes a chunk. And it used to be, and I realized that we weren't playing by the rules, but it used to be a month. You know, you bring it up at a meeting, we approve it the next meeting, elect the committee and then the building. So, that's our concern from me, is that might slow it down so much if there's not enough time for the commission to actually work on it.
You to call on people, or are you gonna call people now? That's your
Yeah. I mean, I think to answer your question, it's like, yeah, it adds a month, but it's like we have to be in line with the code, and in order to get council approval, we need that step of approval from the mayor and city manager before it can get to the consent calendar. So, I don't know.
I think just to
I
take
think
a,
they're sort of tied there.
just a quick step back, because this council commissioners may not have remembered this, but this did come up initially. This was sort of brought to our attention last fall when we had the work session with council to basically go through the annual report and work plan. And it had changed, and there was a motion during that session to approve both the work plan for the coming year as well as the education committee. And that was based on feedback from the city manager's office, where they basically said, your bylaws are not in agreement with the code, and the code supersedes the bylaws. And so this is what kind of has to happen. So at that time, there was one pathway, and it was to have a committee stood up at the time of the work plan, and that was going to be the only option. And we basically said there has to be a way to be responsive to ideas that are going to emerge during the course of the year, because they will. A topic's going to arise. We're going to hear from the public. Things will happen. We have to figure out a way to do that mechanism. And so it's taken a while to come up with that process, but we continue to work with the city manager's office to figure out what this alternative pathway would be. And this is the one that we've arrived at right now that allows us this is not the only pathway to actually put up a committee, period. So part of this is again, thinking about kind of how we might structure, and this is for the leadership, how might we structure a retreat in the fall to think about what the year is going to be, because that's going to really inform the work plan for the next year. And how to think about that. Not that we're going to come up with every idea that might be a committee idea, but to think a little bit more holistic and strategically through that. I think thinking back on last year, we had the retreat on my 9th day in the job. So, there was a little bit of, I was still trying to get my sea legs under me a little bit. And so thinking a little bit off the old model and having this new model kind of drop in the middle of this process has made this a little bit disruptive. So I think the old path of having things stood up previously and being done in a month is not viable. Like, it's not something that's going to get in front of council. It's not a pathway forward for us. So we're trying to figure out an alternative pathway outside of the work plan pathway to get something in front of council. And so this was an attempt to try and come up with a way to actually get something on a consent calendar to allow the commission to respond to these emerging issues that we know are going to arise from the public, from interested parties, from conversations, from news, from things that happen in the city, and coming up with a way to do it. And so just wanted to provide a little bit more holistic. I realize it's overly bureaucratic, but we have two pathways right now. We're trying to figure out the best way to make this work with kind of the options that we have at our disposal, and not make it so that it becomes a 6-month process. And hopefully that we could get something. And Councilor Silver, I heard your opinion on that, and I think aligning this with the meetings that are going to occur with the mayor and city manager and with yourself, I think that's an area where we'd have to figure out how to be strategic in that and figure out how timelines align to figure out how to not make this a 3-month process, because that doesn't benefit any of us in doing that. And so that's going to be part of kind of working through this. But I think we're at this point where we haven't done this yet, so we don't really know what it's going to do. And we kind of want to figure out outside of the work plan process where we go to the commission in the fall and go to council in the fall and have these all approved, or have whatever topics are going to be approved as part of that process. What is the alternative pathway once that has been approved for getting topics stood up? Chris?
I would ask for maybe a part of our packet at the retreat each year, that the timeline that would be in there. So it'd be the timeline of when all these meetings kind of merge. So when the mayor quarterly meeting is, the city council meeting, and then that way, when something comes up, people could just go to that sheet and go, oh, if I want to, like, sometimes people are thinking about a committee topic, and they can be looking and going, oh, well, if this is actually going to have any efficacy this year, I have to get this done here, because then that meeting, that way we could see the lineup We're not trying to recreate the wheel every time we have an idea, because I mean, all of us recognize if someone had gotten an idea in this June, the end of April, and you missed what that timeline might be, there'd be no purpose to even try to start a committee until next year, because by the time it got approved, then you wouldn't have time for the committee to meet, and then it would be July. So if we could have that timeline, I think that could be a useful tool while we're working under this code.
Let's do Jan, Laura, Devin.
Yes.
Oh, and Dennis. Did you, let's do
I think Laura was before me.
Laura, Jan, Dennis, Devin.
I can go last.
Yeah, this is clunky, but it is what it is. There's no, we're doing this, so I think we just need to accept that. My takeaway is that we should just be really focused at the retreat and make a committee for everything we want to work on. We should pre-form a committee, and that way we can do it throughout the year. For me, this seems pretty untenable, like realistically, not untenable. It just seems like if we already have things in our work plan we're going to work on, we should just preemptively form a committee, if that is okay, because we're going to work on it in the year. It's in our work plan. We'll need a committee, so we should just get them all ready to go at the beginning. And then this can be like the kind of last resort if something really comes up that's totally new.
I had a somewhat similar reaction. We just need to, first of all, I appreciate you all, the work that you're doing, trying to kind of thread the needle on this. I get it, trying to overlay it.
It's like
Several layers of
why.
bureaucracy. And then I have questions about that, but that's probably just a diversion. If we were to just follow this and make committees ad hoc, it will happen that sometimes it will take 3 or 4 or 5 months, because sometimes if the people who came about the leaf blower came the week after we'd had our quarterly meeting, oh well, we just have to wait. Sorry, it's going to be probably close to 6 months by the time we get a committee to work on this. That's just the way, that's just baked into this. So I think unless we stand up some committees at the beginning and maybe we frame them somewhat broadly, so certain things may be able to be sent to a committee. It's not a super narrowly focused thing. I don't know. I just think there will be some issues, and I get it. And I am curious, I must say, I appreciate what you said about this is work that's going on, trying to bring all the commissions into alignment with their, do they all have that clause in their bylaws?
Every
that-
piece of code is different. And so it's basically saying, like, it's the rules that apply to the planning commission, and they're basically saying the planning commission, you need to adhere to these rules. For the Human Rights Commission, they have similar things. Theirs might be more dealing with the media and some of the outward communication that they do. So
So they
everyone
don't-
has
they
its
don't
unique
have that-
challenge.
that
Yeah, they
same
don't have that.
challenge that says that every committee must be approved.
Yes.
That's just special for us.
I don't know if it's just, I wouldn't speak to that because I don't know if every code, but yeah, each commission has its own set of language and things that it's need, that they're focusing on trying to bring into line.
And then one of the things you had up here, you referred to the time sensitive track. And I was curious as to what that meant.
Sensitive track. Regarding
For
what?
the last bullet on that page right there.
Oh, the time.
So
It's
this
just-
is, that's language actually from the working agreement that the commission approved a couple of years ago.
Uh-huh.
And so that's basically one of the questions that's part of that says, what is the impetus for forming a committee?
What is the time sensitive track though? Is that's in our
Oh.
working agreements, but not in code?
That's the working agreement the Sustainability Commission created.
Right.
So I just copy and pasted this. I'm not sure.
I think that's
So it's
like,
laid
you're
out
not
as
allowed to just
specific.
talk about something that you haven't given, if that's like gone out in a packet, but sometimes there's time sensitive things, so we have a little exception in our.
Well,
working
that, I know,
agreement.
that's what I'm saying. If we
Yeah.
made it, we made ourselves an
That's ourselves, yeah.
exception. It isn't in
It
the
doesn't
code.
affect committees.
This isn't the code, these questions, but these are, working agreements. Let's see. Let's go to Dennis.
Yeah, well, part of my questions, and I share what I get a sense of frustration, a bunch of a feeling of the process is. But the process is what the process is going to need to be. But one of the questions I've got is about development of a proposal that would then go through this review process. Because without a public meeting, how does a proposal for a committee even get developed unless there's a champion? Which in the case of the leaf blower, Devin did most of that proposal. Is there another way other than a champion develops the whole proposal? Because if we meet as a subset of the commission to develop a proposal, isn't that a public meeting? So can a proposal only be refined at a full commission meeting if there's no subcommittee? So that's part of my process question. Is there a path forward to even have a conversation about a proposed committee without it being, on the commission's agenda that's consistent with public meeting law?
I think that's where it would be is during the Sustainability Commission meeting. And what we had talked about yesterday with Laura and Lisa was, there was a need expressed to have sort of this informal conversation for brainstorming and ideation. And so we figured the Sustainability Commission would be the best place for that, for like a 20 to 30 minute agenda item to brainstorm and talk about that idea.
I think what you're saying, Dennis, though, if there were two champions in that meeting who said, we'll follow up and talk about it, if they're not part of a formal committee, as long as you don't hit quorum, you don't trigger public meeting law. Isn't that true?
Right? Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, you.
Yeah,
you
it
only-
could be a
you
couple
only
of
use a
people,
picture
but
of
like
the-
it couldn't be, in this case, it might have been Art, Devin and I who would have talked about a proposal.
But
Devin-
you weren't a formal committee yet, and you weren't a whole quorum of the counts of the commission, so you didn't trigger it.
Oh, right. So since we're not a committee, we don't have to have a majority of the committee for quorum. Okay, that makes sense.
Something else.
I just,
It's your own time, yeah.
I'm cautious about where we are in Oregon public meeting law.
No, that's okay.
I've read the trouble the school board got themselves into, so.
And I would want to clarify that, but yes, that's my understanding as well. So,
Except that Rob Handy, and there's precedence for this, Rob Handy and Pete Sorensen both got nailed on, this is before your time, on public meetings law stuff for the two of them talking about an issue and not being an important, right, but I'm just saying that
as commissioners or
commissioners
as.
meeting,
Were they commissioners?
county commissioners, and then, right.
That's different.
I think for electeds, it's a slightly different.
2 out of 5.
They got
Okay,
three.
I'm gonna facilitate everybody.
Right.
So that's a county commissioner, we are not county commissioners, so different rules for us, but glad that we're thinking about, paying attention, keeping our eyes dotted.
Yes, and we'll clarify that to make sure that we're not putting anybody in a position
This
that's.
council business we're talking about outside of council. Anyway.
Well, it's not council business yet, we're just talking about an idea, not. But anyway, we'll get a follow-up.
We'll
because
follow up
none of
on
us
this
know
for
for
sure.
sure.
That'd be great
Wanna
if
put
that was
anybody in a
like
position that's gonna be a
very
problem, we will clarify.
clearly stated to every commissioner.
Okay, like who can meet, how many can meet, and what can we talk about?
So there's several people that haven't got to talk yet about this topic, I think like. Did you have a stack? No, okay, Devin.
Okay.
Karen. Counselor
I think
Stoffel.
that simple was before Karen.
Okay, Devin, Counselor Stoffel, Karen.
So just a couple comments really, to agree with what Jan was saying is that in practice, it does look like a 6-month process and we have 2-year terms. And that's like, plus you'd have the research time in the committee and actually time for the committee to meet, to complete the research, and it almost becomes like impossible to do. I mean, just to your point, where if someone shows up and you want to do this immediately after the sort of timeline, I'm just seeing like, understanding that this is the rules, I'm just sort of like, it still seems pretty crippling. So that leads me to think kind of also, is there a way then to circumvent it with when the work plan is created, to really create some sort of wording that is more blanket affiliated than like looking into a crystal ball and seeing what all the issues are going to be. Because obviously there's been so many that nobody anticipated on some levels in the last couple of years for sure, and things are changing really quickly. That kind of, those are two kind of tied but separate things, like maybe focusing on how to cover ourselves to be able to work on these things more clearly, more straightforward in real time with blanket language.
I mean, I think that's something that's probably worth discussing further. I think that the other challenge is that's still gonna need to go in front of council as a work plan, and explaining kind of the blanket approach is gonna have to be part of that kind of
Great.
work session.
I think that's
process.
excellent, right? I mean, I don't have a problem with that with council, as long as, I mean, no, I don't really have a problem with like trying to get council on board for something like that for the Sustainability Commission to free us up a little bit to work on topics. At least from my perspective. And then it just seems like there's a lot of sort of chicken and egg situation, like with some of this process. It's like, to Dennis's point, you know, we are supposed to have information that we can't have until we have the committee in some ways. Like there's a little bit of this sort of circular.
But the question, those are supposed to have the answers. I mean, yeah, you don't have to have the answers at all to the questions. You just have to have the questions that like potential questions that this committee is going to explore. And I mean, we haven't even given this process a try. I really don't think it's going to take 6 months. That's my first point. I think my second point is like 10 months isn't that long to predict at the beginning of the year what are, you know, 3 or 4 good topics that we can work on this year. You know, I think it behooves all of us to just have a stronger work plan at the beginning of the year, which is makes us as a commission, you all as a commission, more effective. So 10 months goes by in a snap. You know, I think let's try to be more strategic up front about what we're going to do in that 10 months. And then let's just give this process a try. You know, I think it's easy to assume this is going to take forever. It's so much red tape. I mean, the public works director recommendations was like a quick email. The mayor meeting, I mean, quarterly comes up so fast, you know, so I think it's going to work if we can just give it a try and run through it. But maybe that's.
And we don't have a choice, so let's.
Right, I mean, no, obviously, that's why I said I'm just making comments. It's not that I don't want to do what the plan is, it's just these are my concerns.
And I think the chicken egg, I think that's a good point. I think the questions are intended to be prompting questions, but to say, and really it's to try and fill out a little bit more. It's not to answer all the questions. It's to basically come up with a proposal that speaks a little bit more to how is this going to help us improve council's understanding of this issue? How is this in alignment with kind of where council has been thinking or not been thinking on something, but just a way to flesh out a little bit more, just to provide a little bit, not to answer all the questions that are there, but to prompt how this committee is going to help answer this question. If that helps answer. But I do, you know, but it's a way to prompt some of that thinking and discussion.
There's something else.
Thank you. If we front load it with a whole bunch of committees, council's not going to approve the work plan because it has to seem realistic that the commission can actually do it. So I'd be careful of that. I'd also be careful of just a blanket committee. We're going to do whatever we think is appropriate. Council's not stupid. We want you to do some projects that will be helpful for us. And just leaving the gates open comes back to the problem we've had where the commission was really hard on a whole bunch of committees. And not all those ideas, I mean, you might throw on the council, but they don't stick. So I really want to value the commission's time. Go back to the slide before this with Matt's suggestions. I talked yesterday with Danielle about this, and the first 2 questions, I think, our need to be answered before it comes to council. But the rest of the questions don't need to be answered. They need to be on the request to say the committee will be looking to answer these things. Because those are the same kind of things that we have staff look at for a topic. So I don't want you to feel overwhelmed that you have to do all this work. That's the committee work. But I would want to know, since it's not in the work plan, why did it come up now? And, you know, if there is public interest, then there might be, the answer might be, the public doesn't know about it, but you know, we're all gonna blow up. So we need to do something. So does that help a little bit? That the first two questions, I think, we need to be answered, but the rest are just, this is what we're gonna do. I know you're really frustrated. I know this isn't the way the commission worked in the past, nor is it the way you want to have an effect on what work is. And that our year is only 10 months, you know, it's only 10 months. Well, I will say, when years have passed, those quarterly meetings, I don't think they come up very fast. I don't. Or else we haven't been having them, because I don't. Okay, well, that's why they're not coming up fast, because we haven't been having them. Orders are taking forever. Okay, thanks, that helps.
It's the program moving, it's staff turnover, it's new staff in the city, so
That's
yes.
fine, it's just like working on my brain.
Yes, and it's something that's gonna be more intentionally scheduled, and I think Chris raised a really excellent point to have kind of that calendar laid out would be really helpful for some strategic planning and thinking through some of these issues.
Great, thank you.
So we are a little over time. I know some people haven't spoken yet on this topic, but I do want to acknowledge that we're 5 minutes over the time limit for this. So if you've already spoken and you feel okay about putting your card down, and if you haven't spoken, please feel free to. Would you?
Yeah. I guess you guys can stone me later. It concerns me a little bit if we only submit committee proposals that we feel the council is already predisposed to approve. Because I do think we have a responsibility at times to reflect independent thought that our communities that we represent may have. So.
I think this process still allows for that. With the number of proposals that
Yeah.
Councilor Sutton was addressing, if
Yeah.
we say like 10, they're like.
Yeah, we don't
"You
want to
can't
flood
do
it."
10, you can do.
Okay.
You don't have to think we're gonna like it. You just have to think we're gonna be interested enough to.
Yeah, okay. That's solid.
Can I cut people off here because I think what we also really want to know now is like, so what do we want to do with the gas powered leaf blower committee? At this point, we have a proposal, we have recommendations from Matt. It's also June, and this is our last meeting. So what do people want to, Ian and I do think if people are willing to integrate those recommendations, so that would be leadership and whoever brought up this topic to begin with, to integrate those recommendations. If there's willingness to do that, we think we can get approval from the mayor and city manager in July. So if we want to do that, let's decide that now, or do we want to wait until and bring this up as a topic at the retreat? That's like the decision point that needs to be. What?
My question is that we propose a committee this year, have it go through the process in the summer or whatever, and then have that be a committee that we already approved to add to our work plan.
Yeah, I don't see why we can't do that.
Like we can't, like it doesn't end here.
No,
Okay, and then my other question was, is that, this thing about the letters, like, as issues emerge, which we may not know at the beginning of the year, could we still have discussion with the commission and then perhaps write a letter?
Oh,
absolutely.
this does not apply to letters. Letters carry on. I appreciate your update and thought that you can't have holdovers. I assumed that the work plan from
this fiscal year is ending at June 30th and that nothing can be done without a new work plan starting with the next fiscal year. So I would just double check that understanding. Because you'd have to add that into the next year's work plan. For it to go
And
anywhere.
could you get it
anyway.
approved now before the?
The commission. But the other piece, right, is the letter that was requested from Beyond Toxics for Active Bethel, and being that the commission is officially on leave, or there's no voting ability for that to go forward until August under new leadership.
Or September.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously can't vote on the letter that's not written, that we have.
Okay, so we just wanted to not lose that thread.
The letter as a commission, but individual commissioners could submit.
Could certainly submit public comment or follow the survey on the website.
Dennis, did you have another question?
No, just a comment. I think in this particular proposal, Devin was our champion. And I think it's a good example of how things will arise during the year, which came from a neighborhood association. And that's the kind of things that emerge during the year that we may want to be responsive to. But also this particular one specifically, the champion is now vice chair. So is part of leadership. So it clearly has a pathway to get into those quarterly conversations, but we may just want to, given the time of the year we are, just integrate it in work plan, so.
What do we want to do? Do we want to extend our meeting by 10 minutes? We're 1 minute. We're actually now at the close. Okay.
I move to extend the meeting 10 minutes.
Laura, just to let you know, the next item in the agenda, a report on the Envision Eugene Technical Advisory Committee, ETAC, is me reporting as your rep to that. And I could certainly do that as a later time if people don't want to extend. It's an ongoing process that I'll continue to represent you on another committee that prepares data for decision makers, planning commission, council, et cetera. So I'd be comfortable if you want to postpone that, or I can be, give you a brief presentation, whatever meets people's needs tonight.
It might be good to do it at the next meeting with new commissioners, because that's so they can hear it too.
Sure, that makes sense.
Thank you. Do you want any wrap up on this one before we move to acknowledging?
What is the wrap up? I mean, so do you all agree to hold it for the work plan, or do we want to move forward on any of it now?
I would like to see us, well, I mean, I haven't been very involved in this issue, so I don't know what kind of timeline urgency there may or may not be feeling. But I would say, let's see if we can work through this process and over the break, see how that works, if that's deemed legitimate. And then it would at least be set up and ready to go. And we could certainly put it into I mean, if this is supposed to allow us to make additions that aren't in our work program, that shouldn't hold us up that it wasn't in the work program. That's what the process is for, right?
Yeah, and to Luis's point, we will just need to clarify the calendar fiscal year issue on the carryover part of this. But yes, we'll figure that out and we'll be in touch with
So I'd like to see us try to do that.
I think it would be a good.
as a test run.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't have a reason not to integrate the things. I mean, that's not hard.
And if it's approved, it can be folded into the work plan regardless.
Right.
Or the commission at that time can decide not to integrate it. It's a decision to be made by the future commission, but this commission can get it as far as they'd like to before that commission starts.
Okay, do we need to vote on that? Okay.
No, I mean, not another like front date, but if you want to.
Well, everybody's lived to try out this new process. All in favor? Second?
I'll second. Okay, there.
Yeah. Okay, yep, try it out.
So you,
Try it out. Okay.
so I'm gonna add in this The PW director. Yeah, and so I guess one sort of kink is like, this commission is not gonna be able to meet again to approve Devin's updated proposal. Do people see any objections with, the recommendations that are gonna be added? Or can we kind of like preemptively vote to approve what Devin
Yeah, with those
presents?
in there. We're approving what we had plus that.
Yep. And that's, yeah, I'm not gonna change it except maybe to make them not questions, make them statements or,
And I think the hope was a lot of this would be plug and play.
Yep.
Pardon me?
It would be plug and play.
Yeah, absolutely.
That would be
It's
the
not.
goal, to not create work burdens on commission members.
Thanks, Devin.
Yeah, I'll make that happen sooner rather than later.
So we have some acknowledging of outgoing.
I just bring commissioner up.
Sorry.
There was a commissioner update issue there. So it was just a really quick one, EV ready homes. So we had a couple of years ago, it passed something up to council wanting to require all new single family and duplex homes to be EV ready, 240 volt plug-in. So anyway, and I had been thinking about so I had called the state building codes because see what the status of that was. And they said, we did stuff on multifamily and that's kind of coming along, but we're not going to be doing anything on single family homes. He said, maybe all that's left are incentives and things like that. So I had a draft letter and some stuff that we would maybe send to council saying, why don't you urge EWEB to give incentives for new construction? They already have the incentive for existing construction. So I thought, wow, where are we sending that to EWEB I'll just do it. So I sent them, and then if there was any positive response, I could bring that back and say, okay, you guys should get on board or something. So anyway, I sent off the letter and I get a response saying, oh, EWEB just agreed to do that a couple months ago. So there will be incentives available for new construction for EV ready homes. So I guess that's about as far as we can go with that, but at least we got there independent of us, but it's good. And I told them that I couldn't tell that very well from their webpage and stuff like that in the announcement. I hadn't, so I said, I think we should need to do a better job of, I'm sure the builders have found out, but maybe not, so they should do a better job on their webpage and stuff of making that clear and what the incentive would be for new homes. Anyway, that's an update on that. So I could put that today.
I had an outgoing commissioner update, I guess. So as we close out this session and as I step off the commission, there were a couple of things that came up in conversation and that I wanted to just share out into the world before I stepped away. And one was the framing around the concept of sustainability as a topic. Obviously, being so large, it has often challenged this body to build direction. And as the staff support for sustainability have shifted, their position descriptions have shifted a little bit, and there is a very significant prioritization of implementation of the CAP in their work, and therefore I think also should be a framing around which this body considers their work plan in the fall, because that is so significant. So not to rename the commission or not to ignore other pieces that are vital to sustainability, but there is so much density in the CAP that applies to equity, that applies to justice and other pieces that we would think of under that sustainability cap, but it has this frame. And so I just really recommend people think about the climate action plan itself as our guidepost going forward. The other thing that I always think about with this body that has come up a couple times already tonight is the fact that there's this sometimes quite lag between the proactive work that this group does and when council might get around to picking it up or doing something with it, and that we sort of lack this through line of a Gantt chart that I vision in my head of like, we sent them a letter in April of 2012 and it got to a work session here, and then there was this, and then it was implemented. And if there was an intern or some student work that could be done to gather the letters from this group, and then what happened to them is something that we've asked several times for staff support to do. And I think there's an opportunity as part of this reset and this rebuild to also honor that and to help provide some continuity for the time lag that it might take for us to put something out, that it doesn't necessarily die in the ether. It might just take a couple of years And that the more we see and hold on to, we sent that letter, what happened to that last year? We can bring that back to when it's pertinent to council or to another group's efforts. And that would be a way to get council to continue to care and connect with the work that you all do. Those are my 2 thoughts.
Any other, or can we say any other? Well, I guess I'm not gonna meet for a while, so any other commissioner? Our last thing is acknowledging our outgoing commission. Did you have something planned for this? Yes.
Well, thank you. So we have 2 outgoing commissioners. I think we'll start with Art. Art has been serving since November of 2016. And is ending in June 2023, so 7 years. And just a few words, I guess I'll say, you know, you've really seen this commission through a lot of its iterations, through many chairs, through many staff, through many city council, you know, members. And so, you know, you are sort of this historian, I think, for this body, and you leave an impressive legacy. I mean, in the short time I've been here, I've noticed how active and involved you are in the community, and it's really inspiring to me. And I think for this commission, the legacy you leave is something I hope you're proud of. And we have a little certificate for you, and then a thank you card from all of us.
Thank you.
As they say, you're honored and whatever, you know, to have served on the commission, things like that. And, happy hearing the discussion today, and I really, for me, the work in the commission was being done in those small committees. It's when you got to work out solutions about things, you found a topic that you could get 3 or 4 people together within a room and work on it and find solutions and do research and allocate tasks and get the bond with that person and know what's going on and form small committees. I hope you find ways to do that, you know, because it's what makes it worth it. And you give up those things to the council. Some of them fly, some of them don't. But hey, at least they heard the idea, and you know, and you accept that. It's nice when they do. And some of ours did, and some of ours didn't. And but we have the experience, you have the energy, and I very much enjoyed that opportunity to have that opportunity with the city and move the city in that way. I believe in the city and its good intentions.
Thank you. We're fabulous next year. Cool. So why don't you come up and get your little certificate?
Oh, this is very nice. I don't think we haven't been doing that, so this is a very nice thing to. So, thank you.
That's a good idea.
Oh, yeah. We should start.
Right,
on
this is
that.
great.
We're doing a group picture
Take my name tag.
at the end. I know, I was like.
Austin's doing.
You get to keep their name. Louisa. So I've known Louisa actually personally for a long time. More as just like a friend, fellow mom, and I see your fingerprints on so many aspects of this community and sustainability, from like neighborhood planning up River Road and planning commission, I think.
Thankfully, no.
Okay, well, I mean, you said Good Company, the
Been friends.
refrigerants report that I just got, and this commission vice chair. I mean, it's impressive how involved you are and how many hats you wear. So thank you for the, you know, the service on this commission, and I'm personally just excited to see what you do in your future. And I think from all of us, you know, you've done a great job as vice chair this year. Just in the short few months that I've worked with you here, you know, your frankness, your diplomacy, your ability to communicate your ideas, it really helps keep us on track. And so, thank you. Here's your certificate and your thank you card.
It's my pleasure.
I think it's really interesting with this meeting. You both were the ones that had commission reports. So you had something to share with the group. And we're gonna miss you. Both of you.
Thanks for staying, Laura. You've done a great job in this year too. Thank you so much.
Welcome, everybody. Should we close and then do a group? Sure. Are there any, so it's our next meeting, is September 20th.
Oh, 2 months off.
Any other?
Are we expecting that the 20th will be the meeting?
That was planned, yes.
We're closed.
Yes.
So you're by ends.
Yeah. You got my, I have a picture of you. I have a picture of you getting the award. You're like-
So let's also stand in front of Dennis, like that take like full time, like, or like that's just to go. Are you able to look at Dennis? So his. Shorts, t-shirt. Freezing and I'm like, so. Yeah. And I swear, have an excuse for that. No, we're gonna push you in there, Dennis. Oh, that's proper.
I'm gonna put Dennis in the back.
Yeah.
We can stand below Dennis.